This is MTG Burgeoning, and in this video we will showcase the contents of Black Color Support Pack number 1 of our Jumpstart Commander Cube. If you haven't been following along or are new to the channel, look in the description of this video for links to the primer video for this series, its playlist, as well as a list of the cards featured in this video. As previously showcased during the primer video for this series, these are the types of cards you can expect to see in every color support pack. Now, with the prologue coming to an end, let's start spotlighting some black support cards, beginning with some basic lands. We have 3 basic swamps to start off the pack, and on the tail end of those 3 basic swamps, we have 3 basic snow-covered swamps. That's going to give us a total of 6 basic lands, 3 regular, and 3 covered in snow. Our 7th card of the pack, if you've been following along at home, you know it's going to be our Thriving land, and here in black, that's going to be a copy of Thriving Moor. It comes into play tapped, and when it does, we choose a color other than black, and then we can tap this land to add 1 black mana or 1 mana of the chosen color to our mana pool. Our next card is our Utility land, another non-basic land, and for Black Color Support Pack number 1, that land is Bojuka Bog. It enters the battlefield tapped, it taps for a black mana, and when it comes into play, we exile target player's graveyard. A great land to hose any of the graveyard players sitting at the EDH table who are manipulating or doing other kind of deranged or perverse things with their graveyard. All right, that will bring us to our next card, which is our MDFC. That is our Modal Double Face card. Spell on the front and land on the back. And for Black Color Support Pack number 1, that card is Malakir Rebirth. At instant speed for 1 black mana, we choose target creature. We lose 2 life, and until end of turn, that creature gains. When this creature dies, return it to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control. This is a great way to prevent one of our creatures from hitting the graveyard, or at least from staying in the graveyard, after it is spot removed or mass board wiped off of the table or off of the battlefield. And if for some reason we choose not to cast Malakir Rebirth, we could put it into play on the land side as Malakir Mire. It enters the battlefield tapped, and we can tap it to add 1 black mana to our mana pool. Note that this spell is a great way to prevent our commander from hitting the graveyard or going back to the command zone. We can choose our commander. We will lose the 2 life, of course, and if for some reason our commander dies, it will hit the graveyard because we will allow it to do so, and Malakir Rebirth will put it right back onto our side of the battlefield. And since this MDFC does have a land option on the backside, we're going to put it up there with our lands. All right, our next card is going to be our Planeswalker, and for this color support pack in black, that Planeswalker is Professor Onyx, a legendary Liliana Planeswalker that enters the battlefield with 5 loyalty counters for 4 and 2 black mana. This version of Liliana has the Magecraft ability, which means that whenever we cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, each opponent loses 2 life, and we gain 2 life. Now, as you understand, if you know all the ins and outs of this Jumpstart Commander Cube, we can't guarantee that this version of Professor Onyx in this black support pack will be surrounded in a spell-slinging environment, but we will have some instant and sorcery spells in every single pack, so we may be able to benefit more than once from Professor Onyx's Magecraft mechanic. We can add a loyalty counter on to this version of Liliana to lose 1 life, and then we can look at the top 3 cards of our library. We can put 1 of them into our hand and the rest into our graveyard. We can take off 3 loyalty counters to have each opponent sacrifice a creature with the greatest power among creatures that player controls. That's a fantastic way in which to thin out the ranks on our opponent's sides of the battlefield. And note that since this is a sacrificial trigger and not a targeting trigger, this will dance around indestructible, protection, ward, hexproof, shroud, and a lot of other ways in which our opponents can keep their creatures on their sides of the battlefield. Well, Professor Onyx will come in and say, you need to sacrifice it. And if we can keep this version of Liliana on our side of the battlefield long enough, we can take off 8 loyalty counters and have each opponent may discard a card. And if they don't, they lose 3 life. And then we repeat this process 7 times. Is it 7? Repeat this process, 6 more times. So we do it 7 total times. 1 for the initial, and then we repeat it 6 more times. That's each opponent. They either discard a card, and if they can't, they lose 3 life. So hopefully none of our opponents will have cards in their hand, and then that just means each opponent will lose 18 life. However, those cards that are in their hands, they may deem more valuable than the loss of life. So maybe Professor Onyx just says omit skipping the cards if you value them that much, and then just lose 18 life. All right, next up is going to be our creature modifier card. That's either going to be an aura or an equipment. And in Black Support Pack number 1, that card is going to be an aura. It is Diabolic Servitude. For 3 and 1 black mana, when Diabolic Servitude enters the battlefield, we return target creature card from our graveyard to the battlefield. When the creature put onto the battlefield with Diabolic Servitude dies, we exile it and we return Diabolic Servitude to our hand. So this is a way in which we can continuously cast this enchantment and bring creatures from our graveyard back onto our side of the battlefield, as long as we have a creature to enchant with. If we go to cast the spell and then the creature that comes in gets one-offed off of the board, Diabolic Servitude is going to have no creature to enchant. And then when Diabolic Servitude leaves the battlefield, we exile the creature put onto the battlefield with Diabolic Servitude. So if our opponent disenchants this aura from the creature that we returned from the graveyard, the enchantment of Diabolic Servitude will leave the battlefield, it'll hit the graveyard, and then we will have to exile the creature we recurred from the graveyard. So there are some perils to playing with this card. The aura itself being in a total mana investment of 4 mana, that is a little bit... Wait a second. Oh, this isn't even an aura. My mistake. This is just an enchantment. Enchanted... When the creature this isn't even an aura. Oh, I'm going to have to... That brings up quite the puzzlement, because this isn't really a creature modifier. This isn't an aura, this is not an aura. You know what? We're going to have to put this one over here to the side, and we're going to continue on with the video, because we're going to keep making sure that we hit all of our different cards, and we may have to come back to this card, because that is not an aura. That one slipped through all of quality control, which includes MTG Burgeoning himself. So I thought this was one of those reanimate dead type of enchantments, that when the creature returns from the graveyard, this becomes an enchant creature card that turns into an aura. That is not the case. This is just an enchantment that sits out and does not become an aura at all. Yes, that's exactly what we're dealing with here. Oh, okay. All right, so we're going to come back to that. So let's move on, keeping a little question mark on there for Diabolic Servitude. Moving forward, we're going to go with our Color Strength spell, skipping over our Modified Creature spell for the time being. And here in black, we're all about draining life and gaining life. And there are a few creatures that can do it better than Blood Artist, a 0/1 vampire for 1 generic and 1 black mana. Whenever Blood Artist or another creature dies, target player loses 1 life and we gain 1 life. Note that this is whenever any other creature dies. It doesn't have to be on our side of the battlefield. It doesn't have to be on our opponent's side of the battlefield. Any single creature that dies will trigger Blood Artist. Also note, because this could be important, this is not a symmetrical life drain ability. This is not each opponent loses 1 life and we gain 1 life. This is target player loses 1 life and then we gain 1 life. So if one of our opponents for some reason has hexproof, Blood Artist will not be able to drain that 1 life from that opponent. Something to keep in mind as you continue to see the black support cards pile up in this particular pack. All right, moving forward, we have our spot removal spells. We've got 2 spot removal disruption spells coming up next, and the first one is Feed the Swarm. At sorcery speed for 1 and 1 black mana, we destroy target creature or enchantment an opponent controls, and we lose life equal to that permanent's converted mana cost. Destroying creatures in black is easier than Sunday morning. However, finding a spell to destroy an enchantment in black, well, that's a feat that's as rare as winter roses. So if we are able to tie both of those 2 dynamics on the same card, destroying a creature or destroying an enchantment. We want to do that every single day of the week and twice during Friday Night Magic. We will gladly lose the amount of life necessary to destroy a target enchantment, particularly if we're rolling with an all-black support pack. All right, next up is spot removal or disruption spell number 2. That is Lethal Scheme. At instant speed for 2 and 2 black mana, we can convoke this spell if we so choose. Any spell with convokes means that our creatures can help us cast the spell. Each creature we tap while casting the spell, it pays for 1 generic mana or 1 mana of that creature's color. So if we have 4 creatures on our side of the battlefield and at least 2 of them have black in their color identity, we can tap all 4 of those creatures instead of tapping our lands or our mana rocks to cast the spell. And what do we get when we cast it? Well, we destroy target creature or planeswalker, and each creature that convoked Lethal Scheme connives. Now, the connive mechanic will mean that we get to draw a card, and then we discard a card. If we discard a non-land card this way, we put a +1/+1 counter on the creature that connived. So if for some reason we have the benefit of tapping all 4 creatures to convoke the spell and cast it that way, each one of those 4 creatures will connive, will draw 4 cards, will discard 4 cards, and depending on what we discard, it will determine whether or not those creatures will get +1/+1 counters. All right, we're going to our next mass removal and mass disruption. We have 2 spells like that. And a trend that you're going to see here in the black support packs, which is very similar to the trend you saw in the blue support packs, when we were talking about the removal and the disruption spells for blue, if you remember, that there was one of the slot that was dedicated to counter magic. Well, here for black, there's going to be a spot dedicated to mass forced creature sacrifice in the form of creatures that come into play that force our opponents to make sacrifices. And in this first black color support pack, that creature is Gravelighter, a 2/2 spirit with flying for 2 and 1 black mana. When Gravelighter ETBs, we draw a card if a creature died this turn. Otherwise, each player sacrifices a creature. So what we're going to do here is, if we really, really need that card, we'll just wait to make sure that we can cast a Gravelighter when we know that a creature already died this turn. Gravelighter will come in and we'll draw that card. However, a bit more impactful will be casting Gravelighter, getting it onto our side of the battlefield, forcing all of our opponents to sacrifice a creature, and we simply sacrifice Gravelighter. We're not going to miss a 2/2 flying for 3 mana. What our opponents might miss, well, that will be much more impactful. And our last mass removal spell in this black pack, in this black support pack, it's going to be an all-out sorcery called Black Sun's Zenith. For X and 2 black mana, we put X -1/-1 counters on each creature, and then we shuffle Black Sun's Zenith into its owner's library. Note that this sorcery removal spell is symmetrical, so those -1/-1 counters are going to be put onto our creatures too. Which, if we need an ultimate reset button, Black Sun's Zenith is a fantastic way in which to wipe the board of every possible creature. The -1/-1 counters placed onto indestructible creatures will remove indestructible creatures from the battlefield by their death, as long as the number of -1/-1 counters are equal to or surpass those creatures' toughnesses. Also note that from a protection standpoint, this spell does not target any creatures. So creatures with Shroud, Hexproof, Ward, Protection, all of those other things that say protection, well, Black Sun Zenith says, I'm not targeting any of those. You're just going to get -1/-1 counters, and you're going off to the graveyard. All right, our next card is our hate card, our defense card, and in this first black support pack, that card is going to be Drana, Calastria Bloodchief. Here we have a 4/4 flying vampire shaman for 3 and 2 black mana. It also has an ability where we can pay X and 2 black mana to have target creature get -0/-X until end of turn, and Drana will get +X/+0 until end of turn. So with enough mana on our side of the battlefield, we could really make sure we take out so many of our opponent's creatures throughout our turn and their turn if we have enough mana. Note that this is an ability that we do not have to do during our turn. It does not limit or restrict us to making this a sorcery speed ability. We can do this at instant speed, which means we can do it at any time we could cast an instant. We can easily off a creature by giving it minus zero minus X, and as long as we have enough mana, Drana could be a massive threat from a creature removal standpoint and as an evasive threat in the air, because let's remember that minus zero minus X has a backside to it, which is plus X plus 0 to Drana, and that boost of power is going on to a 4/4 body that has flying. Our next card is our Resource of Advancement card, which is going to help with mana acceleration, cards in hand, battlefield advancement, and in this pack, it's going to be the Twilight Prophet, a 2/4 vampire cleric with flying for 2 and 2 black mana. This creature has the Ascend mechanic, which means that if we control 10 or more permanents, we have the City's Blessing for the rest of the game. And at the beginning of our upkeep, if we have the City's Blessing, we reveal the top card of our library and put it into our hand. Each opponent loses X life and we gain X life, where X is that card's mana value. So clearly we do not want to put Twilight Prophet onto our side of the battlefield unless we know we have the City's Blessing, because we want to make sure that we get the benefit of the additional card draw in addition to the peripheral life loss that our opponents will have, as long as every card we reveal isn't a land, and then the nice little bump in life gain that we'll get based upon the mana value of the card that we reveal and put into our hand off of Twilight Prophet's upkeep trigger. All right, next up is going to be our Combat Enhancement card, and for our first black support pack here, that card is the Clackbridge Troll, an 8/8 troll with trample and haste for 3 and 2 black mana, and when Clackbridge Troll enters the battlefield, target opponent creates 3 0/1 white goat creature tokens. At the beginning of combat on our turn, any opponent may sacrifice a creature. If a player does, we tap Clackbridge Troll, we gain 3 life, and we draw a card. So what we're really doing here is we're inviting our opponents to use, or at least we're inviting one of our opponents to use those sacrificial goat tokens that we gave them upon Clackbridge Troll's entry onto the battlefield. We want to make sure that they sacrifice those tokens to tap our troll, to gain us some life, and to draw a card. And eventually, if everything plays out the way we're hoping, our opponent's sides of the battlefield will become barren with creatures, and then we're going to be sending an 8/8 trampling troll into combat every single chance we get. And lastly, at least until we come back to talk about this Diabolic Servitude card, lastly, for our iconic creature type in black, since this is the first color support pack in black, we don't know what the iconic creature type is going to be. I'm pretty sure you've guessed it by now if you've been following along with MTG Burgeoning and what we've been doing here. Our iconic creature type in black is going to be demons. So which demon made its way into this color support pack? Well, it is Overseer of the Damned, a 5/5 flyer for 5 and 2 black mana. When Overseer of the Damned enters the battlefield, we may destroy target creature. I'm pretty sure we're going to destroy target creature. As long as one of our opponents has a creature on their side of the battlefield, we are going to pop it off. And whenever a non-token creature an opponent controls dies, we are going to create a tapped 2/2 black zombie creature token. With the number of creatures that could die on one round of turns, outside of a board wipe of course, even though that will trigger Overseer of the Damned, we will get a bevy of 2/2 black zombies. Yes, they're coming into play tapped, but that's okay. We'll just wait to the beginning of our next turn to untap them, and then we can send these gifted zombies, not that they're gifted talent-wise, but they're gifted to us as presents, as gifts from Overseer of the Damned's death trigger. Well, we're going to take those creatures, those zombie tokens, and we're going to send those bad boys right into combat. As promised, we're going to go check out what we can do about this Diabolic Servitude. And we're back. All right, so MTGBC, here is the situation. We included a card here in Diabolic Servitude as a creature modifier, although it does not modify the creature as an enchantment because it does not become an aura and is not an aura. And we really pigeonholed ourselves in here because of the mana value being 3 and 1 black mana. During the primer video for this series, we show all of the statistics of mana values of all of the support packs, mana symbols, and the mana value costs of those support packs. And we can't go back and put in a different card that's 2 and 2 black mana, because then that means all of those previous statistics are no longer going to be accurate. I cannot do that. There is no way I'm going to bend the integrity of all of those stats just to fit in the modified card. So staying with a mana value of 3 generic mana and 1 black mana, that gave us very, very few options. But at least one of those very few options we can bend and twist to be a reality. And luckily, we did have that in the storage coffers, and that card is Corral of the Void. This aura for 3 and 1 black mana, as you can see, it's an enchant creature we control, and whenever an enchanted creature attacks, we put target creature card from defending player's graveyard onto the battlefield under our control, tapped and attacking. Note, we do not return the creature card. That card stays on our side of the battlefield. Even if we lose control of Corral of the Void, nowhere does it stay that creature card returns to that opponent's graveyard, that opponent's hand, that opponent's side of the battlefield. It just stays with us. And this aura enchantment does have the void mechanic, and that's going to mean at the beginning of our end step, we have to sacrifice Corral of the Void unless a non-land permanent left the battlefield this turn or a spell was warped this turn. Will there be any potential ways to warp other spells in any of the other support packs? Possibly. Is it much more likely that we are going to be able to have some kind of non-land permanent leave our side of the battlefield other than it being warped? Absolutely yes. So minimally, as long as the creature does not get popped off in combat or 2 for 1 when we cast Corral of the Void, we know that when we send that creature into combat, we are going to make sure that we get a creature card from an opponent's graveyard, from defending player's graveyard, and we're going to put that bad boy onto our side of the battlefield, tapped and attacking. That's going to be a very powerful ability here, and as long as we can find a way in which to get something from our side of the battlefield into our graveyard that is a non-land permanent, well, we'll still have control of Corral of the Void on that creature so that we can do it all over again next turn. Under the circumstances, it still matches the flavor of black. It still does modify a creature, and Corral of the Void is going to be an acceptable replacement for Diabolic Servitude. All right, there you have it, MTGBC, a somewhat extended showcase of the contents of Black Color Support Pack number 1. Diabolic Servitude is out. Corral of the Void is in. Statistical integrity is maintained. Flavor of the construction of the packs, of the color support packs, maintains, as it is technically an aura, so it is a creature modifier. Let me know your thoughts about that change, that one in particular, or any other thoughts of the cards brought to you in this video in the comment section below. This is MTG Burgeoning, a channel for all things Magic.